Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block Beyond the Classroom. Today we'll zoom in on the vital topic of STEM education. What is STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and math. And we'll have a closer look at today's challenges in educating and training the next generation of professionals with the technical background and skills that they'll need to contribute to our rapidly changing world. I'm your host, Gene Levinson, creator of the Smart Noter apps that help kids find what they missed in the classroom. And I'm delighted to have as my guest today, Mr. Wayne Carley, who's the publisher of STEM Magazine. And STEM Magazine currently reaches over 300,000 educators, students, and families every month in 47 states and 55 countries throughout the world. The title of today's segment is STEM Education in Everyday Life. Mr. Carley, welcome to Beyond the Classroom.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure too. So you've been teaching middle and high school kids for years, actually.
I have, yes.
I think you told me you've taught something like 85,000 kids since you first founded STEM Magazine some years ago?
Since 2006, over 84,000. I kind of quit keeping track.
So why did you decide to create STEM Magazine?
I was the lead instructor at the National STEM Academy for some years and spent a lot of time in the classroom and realized that there was a really underserved educational resource for teachers. And when I found out that the dropout rate for teachers per capita was actually higher, much higher than the dropout rate for students.
Well, now wait a minute. Now, so now people usually talk about students dropping out, right? But now you're talking about teachers dropping out.
Teachers are dropping like flies, usually in the first 5 years. The teacher rate is teacher dropout rate is much higher than the student dropout rate. And I really felt the need to address that issue and find out why and come up with some solutions.
Right, right. So why STEM education in particular? Why is STEM so important?
STEM is important, in my opinion, because every job from secretary to scientist includes some aspect, if not all, of STEM education. So I thought awareness was critical, and that was one thing we were lacking, was the awareness of STEM applications in every job in everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, when people think about STEM, they usually think about, scientists in white lab coats, PhDs, but what you're saying is that it's really much more of a broad topic than that.
By definition, it is. The definition of science, the accumulation of systematic knowledge. That applies to almost every job that you can think of, and mathematics, of course, to the culinary arts and cooking. Math and technology is heavily applied in those areas. So, yeah, I think every job is heavily weighted with STEM.
I mean, I think even in education, really, people talk about it, teaching being an art, and it certainly is. But I really think that there ought to be some science in there also. I mean, for example, we know a lot about how kids learn, a lot more than we used to know in the past. We know that kids have very short attention spans.
The average is 1 minute per year of age.
Wow. So
that's the statistic that is commonly used. So if you've got a 13-year-old, they're good for about 13 minutes, assuming they got some sleep and ate breakfast. So we stick them in a 55-minute class, and we wonder why they get restless and disruptive.
Right. So what's the solution for that? Is there a way to deal with that?
I personally have a routine when I go into a classroom situation. I understand, and I let the students know that I understand that there are limitations physiologically based on their age, and say, I'll tell you what, you're good for 13 minutes based on being 13 years old. So I'm going to teach for 13 minutes.
So you make a deal with them?
I make a deal with them. I say, I'll teach for 13 minutes. You give me your undivided attention, and then I'll give you a 5 to 7 minute socialization break, at which point they can check their phones and their texts.
Wish my teacher did that.
Yeah, and they can get up and stretch and get all that built up whatever out of their system.
But that actually makes a lot of sense, because then when they come back, they're focused, right? And they're ready to learn again.
They are, and 9 times out of 10 that deal works.
Yeah, I can imagine it really does. So you mentioned that one of the more popular features in your magazine is a regular contribution by a neuroscientist, actually.
Dr. Judy Willis in California. She was a neurosurgeon for over 25 years, made a transition into education.
So she was trained as a neurosurgeon and is now teaching, because presumably because she loves to do that.
Exactly, and she has a fascination and is one of the foremost experts on how the adolescent mind learns. Not only how it learns, but how it stores information and how it retrieves information based on the physiological structure of the adolescent mind. So her articles are not only very, very popular and informative, but just fascinating.
So I mean, it's really, brain-based education. I mean, what we know about the brain, we're actually using that to make education more effective.
If we know how a student learns best based on their brain, it should have a direct impact on how we present that information.
So you were mentioning earlier that, to me when we were talking, that STEM is really misunderstood by a lot of people. Why is that? Why is STEM so misunderstood?
One, because it's an acronym, so it doesn't have one clear definition. But we've jumped to the conclusion that STEM means rocket scientist, engineer, something unattainable to the average American student. When in fact, if you break down the acronym, the science, the technology, the engineering, and the mathematics, by definition and by application, we use those in our daily lives, no matter what we do as students or as adults. And so I think there needs to be an awareness of that STEM application.
Hence the title of the program, STEM in everyday life. People aren't really aware that STEM does, in fact, pervade everything that they do, and it's not really just rocket scientists. It's much broader than that.
I use science and math and engineering just to get to the studio today, to figure out which route would be best and how long it was going to take me, and reverse engineer the time so I could leave at the proper time. And so I use STEM just to get here. And
you probably depended on a navigator, which also, of course, involved quite a bit of STEM in putting that together as well, right?
Absolutely. If I didn't have my iPhone maps technology available today, I would have been lost.
Right. Okay. So the misunderstanding of STEM is one issue that can be addressed. What's another big problem with STEM education?
I think the separation of STEM from all other forms of curriculum. I think that we are under the impression that STEM only applies to science and math classes.
Right.
When in fact it applies to liberal arts, history, phys ed, a variety of, every subject, cooking, auto mechanics, you name it.
Now, I mean, what about getting, just tapping into the natural curiosity that kids have? I mean, it seems to me that the school curricula, the way we're setting it up, it kind of sucks the fun out of it, and that's the way they would put it. Why do we have to take the fun out of everything? Why can't we stimulate their natural curiosity in the classroom?
Teachers have had that privilege taken away from them. Testing, state and government standards that have to be met in order to test has taken the power away from the teacher to teach what needs to be taught. And
so if it was left up to the teachers, would they be putting more excitement into the teaching?
I think they would. They'd be teaching what they're passionate about. They'd be able to respond directly to those areas of curiosity that the students have that they don't have time for now, because you're right, they are curious, but there's never an opportunity to express that or explore that.
Right. So we've identified three problems, really: the lack of understanding about what STEM really is, and that it's really all pervasive in our normal lives, right? The lack of stimulation of their curiosity, right?
Curiosity is the foundation for all learning and career preparation, and we're supposed to be preparing our students to be productive members of our society, so they need to learn skills that are appropriate for that. And no matter what job they're going to do, whether it's from a technical school or a 2-year community college or a bachelor's program, they're going to need those STEM skills, and they're learned in K through 12.
Now, is part of the problem that we're just giving them too much? I mean, we're giving the teachers too much to teach. The curriculum is just too jam-packed with topics, and there's not enough time in the classroom to really cover all of that. I mean, and then if you ask teachers to also include STEM who are not including it, they're going to say, well, I don't have enough time to do what I'm doing already. I mean, it seems to me that part of the problem has got to be that we're trying to jam too much information into the curriculum.
That's kind of where I'm coming from with STEM Magazine, is a campaign of awareness. STEM Magazine is not a curriculum, and I'm not convinced that that's the best approach for us right now. Teachers definitely do not have room for a curriculum, another additional curriculum. In fact, if you ask them, they'll tell you they barely have enough time to get through what they're required to do in order to prepare for the designated test ahead. Teaching for the test is what they call it, and it's anything but popular.
Oh yeah, it's not popular with the parents either, for that matter.
It's
really
not popular with anyone.
Yeah. So why do we keep doing that?
You'd have to ask the legislators. You'd have to ask upper administration, because the students find it stressful. The teachers are stressed out. It's damaging to self-esteem, physical complications of stress-related illness, things like that, pressures.
I mean, it would be one thing if we were using that in order to determine, okay, this person needs something that they're not getting, but as soon as that person takes the test, then they're on to something else.
They are, and those that didn't
there's no chance to catch up.
There's no chance to catch up unless you go to summer school. As a possibility, but it's very teaching to the test is very detrimental, and to put a student in that situation who may not test well, who may be very intelligent and be passionate about a subject, to not test well and to get a poor grade and to say, okay, here's what you're worth as a human being, is a terrible thing. And whoever came up with that idea didn't think it through.
We're going to take a short station break and then return to hear more from Wayne Carley about how we can improve the way that we educate our youth in science, technology, engineering, and math. So don't go. Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of Beyond the Classroom. Our special guest today is Wayne Carley, publisher of STEM Magazine, and we're focused on STEM awareness in everyday life. So what about just the practical applications of STEM? I mean, when we're teaching kids STEM subjects in school, are we really connecting it to the real world in a way that, that they can relate to? And are we teaching them how to use what they're learning?
Students have always said, I'll never use this when I grow up. I can remember saying that about algebra after I flunked it. The first time I said that, no one will ever use this, but in fact we do. We do it subconsciously. We're just wired for math and science, technology, engineering. One of my favorite practical applications, I mean, there's obvious ones, rocketry, cooking, things. Those are all practical applications of math and technology and science. I love the sports application of like basketball. Just the fact of dribbling a ball down the court requires physics, the engineering method, which is a decision-making process. It requires energy calculations, geometry, trigonometry. All these things happen subconsciously, instantaneously, just playing basketball as little adjustments are made. And before you pass the ball or shoot at the basket, the mind instantaneously has to calculate how far am I from the basket, how much energy do I have to put into the ball to get it there. And that's all happening, and it's all STEM.
Yeah, and when you put it that way, actually, that actually makes it kind of interesting. I mean, if teachers were making those sorts of connections in the classroom, I think the kids would be able to relate to it a little bit more.
That's the integration that I'm looking for. Not a new curriculum, not something else to teach and repeat and test them on, but to show them how they're already using STEM in things they enjoy and things that they're good at and things they want to be good at.
Like their mobile phones, for example, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they can definitely relate to those, and there's so much STEM that goes into the construction of them, the design of the software. I mean, it's really all about STEM that makes it possible for them to have those little devices that they really love so much. So if it could be related to that, I think that they would probably
and some of the classes I've taught, we've talked about some of the new cell phone technology on the horizon, and it just blows them away when I talk about the implants in the cheek. They won't be texting anymore. Of course, now that we have Siri.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, there's one in the works right now. It's like a Band-Aid that sticks to the side of your cheek, and that's your cell phone. It's disposable.
So wearables. I haven't heard it taken to that level.
Well, it's transparent. It's voice activated. Obviously, we don't have to text anymore. We've got verbal texting capable.
Huh.
And a microphone, and it's got a short life cell battery, like disposable contact lenses.
Wow.
Very similar.
Wow.
It's not available yet, but it's on the horizon.
Okay. So what are some of the things that parents can do to try to encourage their kids to be more connected with STEM? Yeah.
I would love to see parents keep up with their own computer skills and technology information, tweeting, Facebook, things like that. Parents tend to fall behind because it's all moving so fast. So I'd like to see them be more involved in that, as well as just the encouragement and cultivation of that natural curiosity that their kids show when they are curious. Well, let's get online and Google it. Let's explore that a little bit. Let's look at that career field. What's it going to take? What do you need to do? I'd love to see more of that.
I mean, are there some tools that we can give parents, to make it easier for them to connect with STEM subjects?
Awareness applies to them just as much as it does teachers and students. And I'd also like to see the parents get more involved with what the kids are actually learning in school and try and keep up.
Right. I mean, so the kids bring home worksheets, right? Why not have something like that for the parents, for that matter? Have the kids bring something home, to share with their parents.
Sure, and your app is a good example of that. It's an app that the kids could bring home and the parents can interact with on their cellular phones to find out.
Right, so they can help their kids with their homework because they don't necessarily know the topics that they need to help them
That's
with.
Perfect
they need
example.
They need a place to find that.
The parent's not the most influential education person in their life. It's still the teacher. So we do want to include the parents, and we hope that the parents will serve as a source of inspiration and encouragement. But it's really the influence of the educator that is at the core of the STEM efforts.
Right. So let's talk about that. What can teachers do more effectively than they're doing now in the classroom?
There's a couple things I'd like to see happen. One, I'd like to see teachers, and keep in mind we already mentioned that they're dropping out faster than students.
Right. So we need to need to make that experience more pleasant for the teachers.
It's like a lot of jobs. When you go to college to pursue a career that you think you're going to like, and then you get into the real world and find out it's not what you thought it was, that happens to a lot of teachers. Discipline is the #1 complaint of teachers, the lack of discipline in the classroom. And it's also
disruptive students.
Absolutely. And it's also the #1 complaint of the students.
The ones who want to learn.
Exactly. I mean, I'll take a survey at the end of every class I teach and say, raise your hand if you want to be a middle school teacher. And no hands go up. And I'll ask them why, and they say, I could never put up with all these people in this class.
That's really interesting because they can actually see it for themselves.
Right. So I think that's kind of ironic that they both suffer from that.
It is. So there needs to be a better way of having classroom discipline in a way that doesn't interfere with what the teachers want to do, which is to teach the kids, right?
One of the tools that I use when I go into the class, keeping in mind the attention span is so short, is that deal that I make with them about the socialization. But I think at the heart of it is I'd like to see the educators rediscover their own personal passion for education and for teaching. And it's very easy to lose that when you don't get to teach what you want to teach, or when you're teaching for the test, or when you've been given, here's what you have to accomplish in the next 5 weeks in order to prepare for this test, and you don't have anything to say about it.
Right.
So very discouraging.
Give the teachers more of a chance to focus on what they're really interested in teaching, and not to have to focus so much on the tests that they have to give, and or to teach other subjects that are outside of their, outside of their interest, but also perhaps their expertise as well.
That happens sometimes. They'll get into a school and there'll be a science teacher, but there's a vacancy in social studies, and they'll have to push them into social studies, and then they wonder why they're not real motivated in that area, or maybe very effective in that area. But if I can encourage teachers to rediscover their own personal curiosity and own personal passion for what they're teaching, it's very contagious to the students, because when the students see the teacher excited about what they're teaching, they can't help but get excited either.
So it would be nice if we could build some of that into the teacher's day, give the teachers a chance to actually explore some of those things as part of the job that they're doing, right?
Absolutely, and it wouldn't take a lot of time, and it's not a curriculum, and it wouldn't interfere.
Right, right.
Not at all.
So the T in STEM is for technology. So do you see a role for technology in promoting STEM education?
Absolutely. I would have gotten much better grades if I'd had internet access in high school and college. Just that alone is amazing to me. I'd be a straight A student if I had to go back to school today.
And it really seems to me that that's underutilized. I mean, we spend so much time telling the kids, filling them up with facts, basically, as if they're containers that we need to fill with facts. I don't see that much time spent in the classroom actually showing them how you go about finding information. Why shouldn't that be also taught in the classroom?
Some schools are lucky enough to have a technology class or a media class where those things are discussed, but not all. A lot of it is budgetary constraints, some of it's regional. Amazingly, a lot of American families and students still don't have internet access or computers at home, so there are some limits there.
But I mean, even in a history class, for example, it's not a technology class, but the teacher could be saying, okay, so we want to find out about this topic about history. Let me show you how I'm going to Google this, for example.
Right. Although it does, we run the risk of some plagiarism when it comes to doing my report for history, because I can go online and dig up everything that I need.
Sure, but I mean, there are ways to safeguard against that, and also the students can be told, okay, here are the guidelines, here are the rules, right?
Sure, and it really needs to be their own, but the information is out there, and that's really the key, is access to the information, and it is there.
Well, what are some of the ways that STEM education has improved since you started? You started the magazine back in 2006 or something like that.
2006.
And so it's been 9 years or something. What are some of the improvements that you've seen in STEM education over that time period?
Well, one, my ability to disseminate the information through an electronic magazine, which that software didn't exist in 2006. It's become much more popular. The other thing is the continued awareness of the diversity of STEM and the broadness of what STEM really is, and how the arts are actually the glue that holds the STEM acronym together. I think that's all very important. So awareness.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about that? So what do you mean by the arts being the glue that holds STEM together?
Well, curiosity leads to imagination, and imagination can be very artistic. Music, for instance, is a strong STEM subject. There's a lot of math, a lot of science, and a tremendous amount of engineering in music.
And it's actually quite interesting that people who make their careers in those subjects are often musicians who are very serious about their music.
Certainly, and once you get in the
Albert
studio,
Einstein played the violin.
Exactly, and the technology in the studio, when the birth of the synthesizer and the electric guitar and things like that, technology is grown exponentially when it comes to music and its applications. So that's just a good example of an art form that is very STEM oriented.
And I think they've even included that in the acronym, haven't they? There's now STEAM.
There's now STEAM,
and A is for arts, right?
It is.
I mean, there really shouldn't be a distinction between art and science. They should be integrated together, I would think.
They are integrated, and a lot of STEAM proponents want their own acronym. I think STEM's got a pretty good head start on them.
Yeah.
I would rather just include them as often as possible, which we do in STEM Magazine. We almost always have an arts article in there. But there's not a lot of economic opportunity for careers in the arts, per se, compared to other STEM careers that have direct influence on the national and global economy.
Looks like we've run out of time. Wayne, it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest today. I've personally learned a lot from hearing your perspectives on STEM education and the importance of improving STEM awareness in daily life. And I'm sure our viewers have as well. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and wisdom on this vital subject. Please join us for the next segment of Rock Your Block, Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Gene Levinson. Thanks for watching. Bye now.